This kid was named Rizwan Khan. In 1983, there were riots among Muslims and Hindus in India. The Muslim people group in India who live in a little rear entryway in Mumbai where Rizwan resides, became one of the mob destinations that year. Due to the mobs, the Muslim people group there swore Hindus. Little Rizwan, who heard their discussion, then imitated the swear expressions of that individual. What he expressed, heard by his mom. His mom then showed him one thing, that we people are something similar. What recognizes isn't religion, yet whether we are positive or negative as people. Examples by his mom was not shown in any school. Something he would recall as he grew up. In individuals' eyes, Rizwan is a bizarre kid. Be that as it may, in his mom's eyes, he was only unique in relation to the typical youngster. The specialist there didn't explain why he was unique. Be that as it may, mother is a mother. They have their own specific manner to get to find out about their youngsters. At school, he was constantly tormented by his companions. Due to the issue he has. In any case, that doesn't mean his imperfections make him dumb. He is really a savvy kid. Hence, his mom took him to a man named Mr. Wadia, who was an informed individual, and had many titles. His mom trusts that Mr. Wadia will actually want to show his child at his home, giving new information to him. However, he said that was garbage. Be that as it may, subsequent to paying attention to Rizwan telling about Mr. Wadia's family in English, he at long last concurs and Rizwan winds up considering with him. The information given is exceptionally assorted, both about books and about existence. At some point, when he needed to learn at Mr. Wadia's home, he was told to return home in light of the fact that the local there was overwhelmed. In any case, he didn't return home, he rather made a straightforward water siphon from a pipe that depletes the water out. This made he flabbergasted by his understudy. Rizwan was likewise applauded by individuals living there. He accelerated from morning to night. From that point forward, he has become popular for his abilities. Many individuals then accompanied their hardware to be fixed by him. He got that on the grounds that he invested energy in the studio where his dad used to work when he was kid. At some point, Rizwan's sibling named Zakir got back home from school with a prize. There he attempted to take the consideration regarding his mom. He needed to say assuming he got accomplishment in school. In any case, his mom advised him to stand by and proceeded with his story to Rizwan. Therefore, an irate Zakir then, at that point, vents his feelings on his sibling. Since he thought everything was Rizwan's shortcoming. Until they grow up, Zakir actually can't stand Rizwan. He at last set off for college to America. Furthermore, Rizwan lives with his mom in India. A couple of years after the fact, Zakir weds and settles down in America. He then requested that his mom move there. In any case, his mom actually doesn't have any desire to leave Rizwan. So he had to deal with his siblings' turn. Be that as it may, before they could move, their mom passed on from a broadened heart hole, abandoning Rizwan in India. He then went to America himself. He lives in San Francisco with Zakir and his significant other named Hasana. Hasana is a brain science teacher at a college in San Francisco. Furthermore, she was the primary individual to realize that Rizwan had Asperger's disorder. This condition makes him scared of new spots and terrified of new individuals. This disorder additionally makes victims loathe the yellow tone and voices that are excessively clearly. From adolescence, nobody informed Rizwan and his family regarding what made his unique. However, presently Hasana advises him and assists him with adjusting to his new climate. Also, carried him to the chemical imbalance establishment. Hasana then tells it to Zakir. Individuals with Asperger's condition can't communicate their sentiments. That is the very thing that their mom has been attempting to do. Just through the figure of a mother, Rizwan can communicate what he feels. She said. Hearing that, Zakir at last grasped his sibling's condition. At some point, he carries Rizwan to his office and gives him a task offering their items to a few wonder shops. Rizwan then, at that point, took the item to a few wonder shops. However, tragically, subsequent to getting back from that point, when he showed up at the crosswalk, his disorder repeated from seeing the yellow line going across the street and nearly got him hit by a train. Around then, everybody came to him to realize what occurred. Furthermore, there was one lady voice that turned into his concentration. The lady told him, essentially nothing remained to fear. Yet, don't make your trepidation greater, which will prevent you from arriving at your objective. On account of that words, he became inquisitive about the proprietor of that delicate voice. The voice ended up being that of a lady working in the magnificence shop across the road. He then, at that point, went there. There he made sense of about himself for individuals in the magnificence shop. Furthermore, get to know a lady named Manira. She was the one who aided and addressed him before in the city. Over the long haul, they turned out to be close. He frequently sells his items at the Manira Magnificence shop and visits there increasingly more frequently. Until at last he requested that Manira trim his hair. Also, precipitously he shared with her to wed him. Yet, she believed that it was only a type of appreciation since he loved his hairstyle. Despite the fact that he wasn't joking at that point. On the following day, he meets Manira once more and there he tells her that he knows the story of her past marriage. He got that data from Rita. Hearing that, she became irritated and advised him to leave. Be that as it may, he answered, wed me. He said. Be that as it may, she couldn't care less and advises him to leave. Manira then, at that point, attempted to stay away from him. Be that as it may, he attempts to move toward her again by bringing her chocolates and inflatables. The motivation behind why she was irate was when Rizwan informed her regarding her past. Since what he said, as a matter of fact, caused she to recollect what she truly needed to neglect. Manira is a single parent and has a child named Sam. Rizwan over and again requested that she wed him. Yet, she thought it was a joke. In the end they concurred that if he would bring up a spot that she had never been to in San Francisco, she would wed him. He then, at that point, consistently takes her to places he doesn't think she has at any point visited. Be that as it may, sadly every one of the spots he called attention to had proactively been visited by her. Since they frequently invest energy with her, he and Sam's become all the more nearer. Be that as it may, sadly, Manira and Sam chose to move to Benfield, California. Since she needed to open her own excellence shop there. Rizwan then, at that point, convinced her to take him with them. He said that his body is slight, so it doesn't occupy a lot of room. Furthermore, he can likewise fix coolers, microwaves, and other electronic things at Manira's home. He said. Be that as it may, she actually can't welcome him. One morning, he got her promptly toward the beginning of the day. He took her, who was all the while wearing her robe, to some place to see San Francisco, which was still shrouded in mists. This sight had up until recently never been seen by her. What's more, thus, at last Manira acknowledged Rizwan's proposition to wed him. Rizwan's industriousness has paid off. Rizwan then told that news to his sibling. Hearing that, Zakir's disturbed and on second thought emphatically goes against his sibling's choice. Since incidentally, Manira is a Hindu and on the off chance that Rizwan gets hitched, he will break their loving relationship. Yet, as indicated by Rizwan, nothing is unique. Since they are Muslim and Manira's Hindus. As their mom said. There are just great individuals and awful individuals in this world. Because of his conviction, he actually weds Manira. Fortunately, Hasina upheld him and he came on his big day. There it was seen that Main Hasina grasped him. After marriage, they lived respectively no matter what their various convictions. They lived cheerfully as a family. Not long after their homegrown life started, the WTC Tower misfortune happened. How the tallest twin pinnacles on the planet around then were obliterated by a plane and became level with the ground. The American government offered expressions against Muslims. Furthermore, thought about that the episode had been arranged and completed by Muslim fearmongers. Thus, in a few spots in America there are many assaults on Muslims. A few shops were plundered. There were killings, harassing of Muslim residents, so they needed to change their Muslim names to stay away from racial impressions. Around then America considered Islam and Muslims to be something terrible. Indeed, even in schools in America, they instruct that Islam is the most savage religion. For requesting murder or jihad for the sake of God. Sam, who has a Muslim dad, be a survivor of tormenting at school. Yet, he would have rather not caused his mom to be stressed. So he didn't inform his mom. Then again, Hasina additionally got bigoted treatment at her office. Zakir then, at that point, advises her to remove the cover. Since it is extremely risky outside for Muslims. Particularly ladies. Knowing about the heinous acts that have occurred for Hasina, Manira, and Rizwan visit Zakir's home. But since of their question yesterday, he would rather not go and simply holds up outside. Zakir then, at that point, approaches him and welcomes Rim to come inside. However, he actually declined. Zakir then cries. Hearing his sibling crying, Rizwan promptly embraced him and consoled him. Days passed, Manira at last found another line of work who was ready to acknowledge her as a Muslim spouse. Their serene life is just briefly. After their neighbor named Imprint, Sarah's significant other who her Manira companion, needed to leave for Afghanistan to cover the insight about the conflict yet passed on there. Imprint's child. He is Sam's dearest companion. In any case, Reese disregarded him and checked out at Sam with cold eyes. Perhaps on the grounds that he believed that his dad's passing was brought about by Muslims. The demise of guiltless individuals around then, affected humankind, particularly Muslims. This likewise straightforwardly affects the existences of Rizwan, Manira, and furthermore Sam. Reese hasn't addressed Sam in days. So Sam met him at the ball field to talk. There they contended. Then, at that point, came the awful young men who at long last beat Sam. Reese didn't exactly intend to hurt him. He even attempted to keep their away from him. However, Sam was oblivious and at last brought to the medical clinic. Reese had to quiet down over the occurrence. Sam was not helped and ultimately passed on because of the punches and kicks he got. Sam is a kid who is one of the casualties of viciousness brought about by bigotry. Manira couldn't acknowledge the way that her child had kicked the bucket. Sam's passing might have been an individual and racial assault. since he was a Muslim so he was killed, said investigator Gracia. She then, at that point, goes to the ball field where his child was killed. Manira communicated her feelings and bitterness to Rizwan, who around then found her. She said that she lamented wedding him who is a Muslim. She lamented that she needed to change their names that this had happened to Sam. Manira shouted madly and she was unable to stand leaving him and was about. There Rizwan said assuming it's your home and why you need to go. Be that as it may, I will go. He said. Be that as it may, he then asked, when would it be a good idea for me rebound? That question made she more close to home. She then, at that point, expressed that there were 30,000 individuals in Benfield and every one of them couldn't stand him. How about you let them know if you are not a psychological oppressor? Tell all Americans straight up to the president that you are con and you are not a fear-based oppressor. For the president to tell the public that Sam isn't the child of a psychological oppressor and his father isn't a psychological militant. That is the thing she shared with him. Manira had to be sure offered something incomprehensible for him to do. What's more, that words probably come out on account of the feeling she was going through. Be that as it may, Rizwan views it in a serious way. He cherishes Manira. He believed if he would get back to Manira assuming he had met the president and conveyed his message. That was the justification for why he needed to go meet the leader of the US. He went out wearing Sam's shoes that he had purchased. He began his excursion to meet the president. The following day he chose to go to Washington, D.C. to meet the president via plane. Yet, at the air terminal, Rizwan, who had uncommon way of behaving, was at long last thought so he was inspected by officials. Realizing Rizwan was an individual with chemical imbalance, he then, at that point, delivered. The investigation took time such a long time that he failed to catch his plane. So he chose to take the transport since he needed more cash to purchase another boarding pass. He got off the transport to an inn to rest prior to proceeding with his excursion. While conversing with the proprietor of the inn, out of nowhere an outsider tossed stones at the window glass. The proprietor promptly took his firearm and emerged. There Rizwan became terrified hearing the commotion from the firearm. Inn proprietors griped that this is going on a result of terrible Muslims who used to explode the WTC building. He said that he would set up a sign saying Muslims are not permitted to enter. Hearing that, he then, at that point, decided to leave there since he is a Muslim. Seeing that Rizwan was leaving, the inn proprietor called him so he wouldn't lose his clients. He likewise asked his name and Rizwan answered, I am Khan and I'm not a psychological militant. Hearing that, the inn proprietor fell quiet. Rizwan proceeded with his excursion to get to St. Nick Fay, New Mexico. He needs to get off the transport to arrive. In the excursion, he wound up in a tight spot financially. Then, with his aptitude, he opened an electronic merchandise fix administration to get cash so he could proceed with his excursion. In the meantime in Benfield, Manthira keeps on researching the unfairness that has come to pass for her child. Hasana met her and said that what she told Rizwan around then was a direct result of her feelings and anguish since she lost Sam and she realized that Manthira truly adored Rizwan. However, Manthira said that she was unable to be Rizwan's significant other around then. Also, should despise him to win and battle for Sam since affection just debilitates. She said. Then again, Rizwan proceeds with his process back on a transport. He met a Muslim couple who offered him food. They went down to rest. There they asked his name and where he was going. Since the transport was leaving, he then said that his name was Rizwan and he needed to implore. There they said assuming that he planned to supplicate, he ought to have glance around of individuals and the spot first. In any case, he addressed that request doesn't rely upon the individual or spot. Be that as it may, on trust. Regardless of who sees it. He actually implores. He got on and off the transport a few times. This time he showed up at Wilhelmina, Georgia. There he helped a harmed kid named Joel and met Mom Jenny who was caring, firm, and somewhat rotund. She was permitted to remain and be taken care of. She even gave him garments by Mom Jenny. They shared tales about their kids who had passed on in Wilhelmina. He then went with Mother Jenny and Joel to the congregation to go to the function for the fighters who kicked the bucket in Iraq. There added a photograph of Sam among the photographs of the people who kicked the bucket. As far as they might be concerned, discussing the previous brings them closer. He then, at that point, discussed Sam in front of every individual who was there. Then again in Benfield, Manthira is as yet battling for Sam's equity. She went to the center of the ball field with a banner of Sam's face with the words a half year without equity. Also, Reese who saw that was as yet hesitant to do anything. Since there was no advancement in proof and witnesses, the police at last chose to close the case. The police said that Sam's case had no response. Hearing that, that's what she said on the off chance that they couldn't find a response, she would track down it herself. Manthira tried by appropriating handouts to different spots. Furthermore, Reese saw her once more. That time he actually didn't have any desire to do anything. In the meantime, Rizwan at long last shown up in Los Angeles and will meet the president 3 days after the fact at a grounds. While imploring in the mosque, he heard a specialist addressing the gathering there, which prompted induction to commit demonstrations of psychological warfare. Hearing that, he said that the specialist was a liar. Since God's way is a method of sympathy, not by carnage and war. The affectation completed by that individual is commensurate to crafted by Satan. Rizwan tossed the specialist with his stone and yelled Satan multiple times. Shown up where shouts were heard as the president entered the grounds region. Columnists and the public filled the spot. Furthermore, there Rizwan ran shouting to the president so often that he grabbed the eye of a cameraman there and recorded him. Rizwan yelled, "I go by con and I'm not a psychological militant. I go by con and I'm not a psychological militant." He said so often in the group to the president that individuals who were close to him misheard what he said and overreacted. They even say that he is a psychological militant. The air became tumultuous. Everybody dissipated away as well as the president. He then, at that point, took captured. He was detained, tormented in such a way genuinely and intellectually. He is known to have followed the president for a really long time. Obviously what he did was dubious. In any case, this will have occurred on the off chance that he was a typical individual. Furthermore, it's basically impossible that anybody would believe should do what he did. Simply because of the premise of sheer love. Be that as it may, Rizwan does it just to get back to Mandira. The cameraman named Raj, who recorded the occurrence, then, at that point, needed to accept Rizwan's story as his project. In any case, his companion disagrees on the grounds that Rizwan is a con, a Muslim. In any case, he couldn't care less and will proceed with his undertaking. They wind up searching for data about Rizwan. They even look for data wrongfully. Quick version, they have all the data about Rizwan and Raj is attempting to make news about him, who is known to be not a psychological oppressor. Yet, just customary individuals. Yet, their most memorable endeavor fizzled. The following day, they attempted to return by meeting with Bobby, a columnist at a television slot. However, he said he was unable to cover the story since he was exceptionally occupied and couldn't change his timetable for the following 2 months. In that discussion, Raj sees a photograph of Bobby's family, which ends up being taken previously the 9/11 misfortune. In the photograph, Bobby is seen wearing a normal Sikhism turban. However, his appearance presently is particularly changed. Seeing that, Raj shares with him. "You changed for what seems like forever. Could it be said that you are apprehensive they will confound Sikhism and Muslims? Look what happened now. Here they don't deal with a Muslim like a person. What's more, do you deliberately not have the option to change your timetable?" Hearing that, Bobby fell quiet. At the point when Raj arrived at home, he promptly got a phone message which ended up being from Bobby. He advised him to that what Raj said had moved Bobby's heart to alter his perspective. News about Rizwan Khan was conveyed by Bobby and watched by all inhabitants. For all of America as well as for the entire world. He said that Rizwan was blamed for being a psychological militant and was captured and detained for 15 days with no proof and without a conventional preliminary. The news additionally shows Zakir and Hassanah being evaluated by him. It was at last found that Rizwan had asked Hassanah for the FBI telephone number to report the psychological militant enlistment by specialist Faisal Rahman, whom he met at the mosque last month. "We were approached to report any dubious individual who is taking part in safeguarding this country from fanatics. Furthermore, when we did, we were tossed behind bars like my sibling," Zakir said. The inquiry is, not why he's attempting to see the president. Yet, what's going on to meet the president? Or on the other hand, is it simply unacceptable for a Muslim man to attempt to do? Zakir said. The report about Rizwan attempting to call FBI at long last arrived at the appointed authority who was taking care of his case. Also, Rizwan's telephone recording to FBI is heard by the adjudicator. What's more, it truly helped in the capture of specialist Faisal Rahman and his associates. At last Rizwan Khan was vindicated of charges and from prison. A few establishment parties began to learn about Rizwan and they framed a Rizwan support gathering and afterward hung tight for him outside. The entertaining thing is, while his allies were holding up at the exit in front, he rather left through the indirect access. Since as per the officials, beforehand there was an insane lady who came to meet him, what's more, had left through the indirect access. He realizes that the lady restricted by the official is Mandira. He then, at that point, went to search for Mandira and saw her remaining external the taxi. In any case, he didn't meet her. He let Mandira go. Rizwan has not had the option to meet her. He said. Since he has not had the option to satisfy his guarantee to meet and pass his message on to the president. This report about Rizwan changed numerous things. Particularly for our Muslims. They become more certain with their way of life as a Muslim. The proprietor of a gadgets shop who is frequently harassed, dares to stand up. Furthermore, Hassanah showed by wearing her hijab once more. Rizwan's excursion to meet the president must be deferred on the grounds that on his way, he saw the news on television that Wilhelmina was being hit by a typhoon and flood. He became stressed over Mother Jenny and Joel. He chose to go there. Showing up there, he saw that everything had been obliterated by the tempest. He at last met them. Wilhelmina was loaded up with water and the downpour was all the while pouring. The congregation where they took shelter likewise nearly imploded due to serious areas of strength for the. In the interim, Zakir advises Raj regarding Rizwan's whereabouts. What's more, they then, at that point, chose to go tracking down Rizwan to Wilhelmina with Bobby and their associates. At the point when they arrived, they saw he attempting to assist the occupants with fixing the harmed church. What's more, treat a few harmed individuals. What he did, was made information by them. The report about Rizwan contacted the hearts of many individuals. What he did, the public authority couldn't do. The news was watched by many individuals including Mandira. It was a result of that activity that numerous Americans from different races and religions, including Zakir and Hassana, came to Wilhelmina to bring their help, to assist with re-establishing the spirits of individuals of Wilhelmina, who around then were running against the wind. Rizwan's story enlivened many individuals and moved all of America. During the video chat, Rizwan was inquired. What compelled him need to meet the president? He then answered, on the grounds that his better half told him. Then he enlightened them regarding what has been going on with Sam. Reese, who watched the news, at last told Mandira the genuine occurrence. The culprits of brutality against Sam, were captured including Reese. At last, this time, she could let her child go. Then, at that point, she chose to go tracking down her significant other in Wilhelmina. Around evening time, when Rizwan was going to proceed with his excursion to meet the president, Mandira came to meet him. He then, at that point, strolled towards to her. Have opportunity and energy to say a word. Unexpectedly, he was wounded by specialist Rahman's men who additionally came to Wilhelmina. As a result of Rizwan's news on television, he was at last taken to the medical clinic. Simultaneously, America around then had picked their new president. Rizwan, who had been released from the emergency clinic, didn't have any desire to return home since he had not met the president yet, who around then was making his most memorable state visit discourse. At the point when he and his family showed up, it was accounted for that the president had proactively left Rizwan. However, Rizwan's allies were likewise frustrated in light of the fact that Rizwan neglected to meet the president once more. However, their failure just endured a second. Since the new president needs to meet him, the mystery administration is then coordinated to accompany the president who needs to return to the area. The security wall was opened and Rizwan was welcome to approach and meet straightforwardly with the president. Before he conveyed his message, the president definitely realized that Rizwan was a cunt and he wasn't a fear-based oppressor. There he likewise snapped Sam's picture from his pocket and said, "This is my child and he isn't a fear-based oppressor as well." The president communicated his sympathies to Mandira. Then, at that point, he proceeded with his discourse discussing the figure of Rizwan Khan. A Khan won't ever break his commitments. Furthermore, he has satisfied his guarantee to his significant other, regardless of whether it requires a long investment and requires a long excursion. From this film we get familiar with a significant example that individual people, paying little heed to contrasts in nationality, race, skin, and religion, we are no different either way in God's eyes. Discernment is worked with the presence of harmony and distinction. It makes everything look more bright without referencing anything that sense like mockery. The convictions we hold are not only a personality, yet additionally our character like what Rizwan did. Watch the news tomorrow.